Good morning and welcome to another Thursday edition of my office hours. My name is JDM, aka Josh David Miller, and this is my regular time to answer whatever questions you guys have about startups, about traction, about the journey from idea to product market fit, from idea to Series A. We've got a theme today on investment. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's actually get kind of right to it here. So first, the question that I want to spend the most time talking about today is what are investors looking for in a pitch? I've had kind of a pitch season. That's what autumn tends to be for me. So I don't know how many pitches I've heard in the last 3 months, but it's probably 400, 500. It's a huge number of pitches. So it's on my mind a lot. And I get this question all the time. And somebody was just asking me about it recently. What are investors looking for in a pitch? And they're looking for, the potential for successful startups. So I think this question is applicable actually beyond just the people who are looking for investment funding. And coincidentally, June, just a second ago in the YouTube chat here, asked this question that she wants to start developing numbers for her startup, which is Organic Nearby, to show the size of market and potential income and probably how we plan to get there. Is there a video or an easy way to understand tools online to help? So kind of related to that. So I'm going to come back to this question at the end after I talk about the bigger principles. So let's actually get to the meat of this question, which is what do investors look for in a pitch? Now, the shortest way to answer this, and the way I usually answer this, is that they are looking for what Alex Blumberg called a credible theory of hugeness. And that's 3 words: credible theory of hugeness, right? And those 3 words, credible theory and hugeness, are I want to break them down a little bit. So let's do it in reverse order here. We'll start with the end goal here, which is hugeness. So if for an investor to invest in a startup, for them to put any money in there, they need to have some measure of confidence that this can become a big thing. They're not after 5% returns or 10% returns. They're after 10x returns. That's 1,000%, right? As opposed to 5% or 10% or something. They're not giving you a loan. That's not what they're after. So if you're not chasing something that's really, really big, that has the potential to be a really outsized impact, if it doesn't have that hugeness potential, then investors just aren't going to be interested. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. So hugeness. So credible theory of hugeness theory. So they're looking for, they need a theory of how you're going to get there. So you're not huge now and you're claiming that you can get there. So how are you getting from where you are to this huge part? Like, what is the path that you're going to follow from that? So we're here. This is our status. This is what we've got. So go to market. This is all the things that we're going to do. This is why that's going to work. And, boom, huge, right? So you have to have a theory about how you're going to get there. And then that theory has to be credible. And that's the beginning part. So credible theory of hugeness. And so the credible part is actually what I want to break down, because that's the interesting part. Most of the time, startups have some type of theory. I think that's often a strong word for what they have. What they have is what my buddy calls a scientific wild ass guess, or swag, which is fine to get started with. And some people don't even have that. They just have hand waves and gut checks. And I think it's going to be big, and that's no good. But let's assume that you have a theory. By the time you're pitching to investors, you should have a pretty robust theory about how you're going to do that. And so it just comes down to this question of, like, what do we actually mean by credible? Right? So what does it mean for a theory to be credible? So they have to have a reason to believe that you are going to become huge, that your theory is right, it's the correct path, that you're on the right path, and that it's going to actually work at the end of the day. So that's the big part here, is that they're looking for credibility. That's the big takeaway. So they're looking for a credible theory of hugeness. And the easiest way, I think, to think about, and I'm going to come at this from 2 different sides, but like the easiest way to think about this is what I like to call the 6 T's. So if you Google around for this, there's like the 5 T's, there's the 6 T's, there's something called 7 T's of startups. They really force a T word in to kind of stand for the thing. But I use these basic 6 T's. So the first one is team, right? You got to have the right team. They're looking for the people for your startup are the right people to execute on this. They have the backgrounds and the experience, the track record to actually make this be a success. There's some reason why they should believe in you as opposed to believing somebody else. This is the question that's often asked as, why you? And that leads us to the second thing, because the other part of that question is why you, why now? And so that's timing, meaning why is right now, today, December of 2022, when I'm recording this, why is now the right time to actually be pursuing this opportunity? That's really, really big, right? So timing is kind of everything. It's one of those things that's really overlooked by most founders when they start on this journey, is this idea of timing. Is if you have the wrong timing, dead, right? So the big players, if you think of any huge player in the industry that dominates their industry, you know, an Uber, an Airbnb, whatever it is, they usually aren't the first to try something like that. By and large, they don't tend to be the first. There are definitely exceptions to that, but they don't tend to be the first. There was some other player, it was a year before, it was 2 years before, 3 years before, and the timing was wrong. The market wasn't ready for it yet. So you have to have the right timing on that journey. And so you have to show some evidence that this is the right time for it. And so that's where you look at what are competitors doing, what are parallel, adjacent industries doing, what are some big trends in the zeitgeist, like what are people doing differently, or what kinds of technology are taking over in certain aspects of all that stuff, and much, much more. Like, why is now the right time to do this? What data can you point to that says that this is the right time to be pursuing this particular project, right? So team, timing, TAM is the third T that I use. So TAM, total addressable market. Some people use the equivalent T word for 10x, right? Because they're after those 10x returns. So you want to show that there is a really big opportunity at the end of this, that there's something that's interesting enough for them to really wager some seriously risky cash on this proposition. So it has to have that thing. It can become really, really big. So TAM. Next is traction. So you actually have to have some traction in the marketplace. So I've talked about traction all the time. Traction is the acquisition of confirmatory data in support of your market hypothesis. So it's customers saying, yes, I have the problem. Yes, I want a solution. Yes, I'll pay for one. Yes, I want your solution. Yes, here's my money. Yes, I'm using it. Yes, I'm staying. Yes, I'm referring my friends, right? It's all that confirmatory data along the way. And the further you are in your startup journey, and subject to some asterisks around what you're particularly building, right? You're looking for some stage of that, right? So some measure of traction. At the end of the day, investors love when you have sales. Sales are the ultimate form of traction. So if you're getting customers coming in, that's fantastic. If you're getting customers and you're getting retention, it's even better, right? But you have to show traction. So team, timing, TAM, traction. Technology is the last one. This is a forced T. This is for your secret sauce, your IP, whatever it is that you're working on here. What is it that is for you, your unfair advantage, in this space? Or do you have is it a thing, a product that you've built and it's real, or the ability thereof, whatever it is, right? So technology, that's a part of it as well. And then lastly is the terms, because they are investors. So this is a bunch of different things, but you can roughly think about it as like the valuation. So when you go to raise money for a company, it's in exchange for equity. And so there's the money that they're giving is compared to what you're saying your company is worth in dollars. That's what we call the valuation. And so you have to have a valuation that makes sense and is credible and reasonable. So the valuation is one. Next is the amount that you're actually raising, right? So that's part of it as well. So if you're after a $50,000 round, that might cause some people some pause, because maybe a lot not enough to be substantial. Then again, if you're pre-seed, that's completely different. But right, so is the amount right? You're after $5 million. That doesn't seem quite right. Does the number make credible sense? And how does that what you're trying to raise fit into the kinds of things that the investor is putting their money into? If they're writing consistently $10,000 checks and you're after a $1.5 million round, that may not align super well. Then again, it might. So that kind of thing. So the valuation, the raise, and then of course the instrument. Is this a safe convertible note? Is it whatever it is? So there's all the technical details behind the terms that of course an investor cares about, because there's a financial arrangement at the end of the day, right? So that's the six T's that I use. So when we talk about this question of, what do we mean by credible? I would say that they're looking for, roughly speaking, these 6 things. They're looking for, do you have the right team? Is the timing right? Is the TAM right? Is the traction there? Do you have the right, technology, IP, whatever? And do the terms make sense? So there you go. Boom. That's one side to come at what we mean by credible. But I'm going to come at it from a slightly different and a bit simpler side too, because there's really two big things that they're looking for that deserve to be kind of broken down, sort of on their own. So let's do that. The first one I would call evidence of opportunity. So this is coupling some of those T's together and some other things, but this is the idea of that there's that big opportunity there. And the specifically, it's not just the TAM here. We're talking about you've identified a particular customer who experiences a particular problem. You have evidence that the customer's there and they have the problem, that they want a solution, the solution, that their pain is urgent and severe, sufficient to warrant them actually paying for a solution right now, as opposed to just being some type of minor inconvenience. And then there have to be enough of these people out there. They have to want your particular solution. You have to have some early evidence of buying behavior that people are actually going to action against this, right? So you just need evidence that like the opportunity is real and it's not just a cockamamie scheme. That's really a big thing that people are really looking for. It's the first thing that I look for in any pitch is there evidence of opportunity? Like, are we even talking about a thing, or do you need to go back and even like put box around what the thing is, and not to mention getting evidence for the thing, right? So there's that. Oh, thank you, June. Too kind. I appreciate it. June's a good fan of the show here. I'm happy to have you here today. We'll get to your question in a little bit, right? So that's evidence of opportunity, and yeah, so that's the first one. The second one, the last one that I'll give here, of this idea of like, what do we mean by credible? Two big things investors looking for in a pitch, right? That's a root question. What are investors looking for in a pitch? So evidence of opportunity. And the second one is the opportunity isn't enough on its own. You also have to show that you have the ability to actually raise that money, right? Or sorry, to make use of that money and do something good to realize that opportunity, right? You have to have evidence of ability. And so this is where we bring in things like the team. So do you have the right team to do this? Do you have traction? So like the past behavior that you've already gone through, do you have evidence that you guys can execute because you have before and you've got the right people? You're starting to get the right advisors or mentors interested in this. You've made some key hires, maybe, if that's the right stage for you. You've built some technology that shows like, this is our thing. We have, the whatever IP or secret sauce that we're using to do this thing. Or maybe we just actually are showing this demonstrated ability because we've done some really kick-ass like prototyping and early validation. And so now it's just about paying somebody to build the thing. So we're going to use the money to hire. That's also like perfectly fine too. And so there's all those different things that they're looking for, right? So that just show that you have the ability to take that opportunity that we've already said is out there and you have some evidence is real and actually make that into a thing at the end of the day. So that's what I would say, those two big things. So if you say, what is an investor looking for in a startup pitch deck? They're looking for evidence of opportunity and evidence of ability, right? Those are the big buckets. And if you want to break that down, you can break that down into those other 6, T's that I showed before. That would be the team, timing, TAM, traction, technology, and terms that show like these are all the miscellaneous pieces that that go into that. So, hopefully that's helpful. That's helpful there. And Ron, very happy to contribute to your delinquency. This is good. That's basically what I'm doing right now. I'm talking instead of doing my job. So all is well in the world. Okay, so back to June's question from the start, which is kind of related to all this. So again, it was, I need to start developing numbers for our startup to show the size of market. So we talked a little bit about that and potential income and probably how we plan to get there. Is there a video or an easy to understand online just help? So we've kind of talked about a lot of this stuff, but from a different perspective. And I want to like kind of tweak the way the question is worded here to get to a really good question. So to show the size of market. So that's great, right? We're talking about TAM. Yep. You need to do that. And the potential income. And that's kind of related to that. I think the size of the market is the size of the opportunity, which is the same as potential income, right? So those two things are really the same thing at the end of the day. And probably how we plan to get there. Yes. So that's your theory. You have to show that here's how we're going to do it. And for your stage, that's usually a go-to-market, right? Because you're not already, out there at large, so companies that are roughly speaking, sub $1 million in annual recurring revenue are really looking at how do they get into the market. And 1 million ARR doesn't mean 1 million ARR, but it's our, finger in the wind at the golf course. So so your go-to-market then is like, how do we take all these tactics and little things that we can use, marketing tools and so forth, to actually get in the hands of really early customers without just buying them, because we can't afford to buy them. We have to buy our early customers, and that really portends ill on our ability to acquire future customers, because they're only going to get more expensive. So we want to find ways to really cheaply and really easily get in front of customers and get them to sell. That can come from network in the really early stages, but it's going to need to go beyond that. Like, what's really cheap ways to get in front of a lot of these customers and to get them to like really opt in and kind of crush, smash that, like, buy button or whatever it is for your startup. So you have to have this like go-to-market plan. So like, that's the thing you have to do, and then you want to show why that plan is credible, why you can make that work, and how that is going to go at the end of the day. The numbers game of this is where things start to get complicated, and we start to bring in all these other layers of things. And this is where you start setting your goals. These are our key metrics that we really care about for our particular startup. These are our North Star metrics, and we're after these. And so therefore, when we do our pro forma and we start looking at how our finances look over the next 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, we're taking in that North Star, and that gives us insight into which of those key metrics are going to impact our ability to get there. And that means we understand how this is going to impact our scale at month 6 and month 9 and month 12, and things get really complicated really fast. And that's all very specific to your startup. But what you're really after to bubble up from all of that in the early stages, before when you're fundable, but at a pre-seed level, friends, family, fools, maybe some angel investors getting in there, that pre-seed leading into seed stage, right? You have a lot less of that. You're going to have some of that, but you have a lot less of that and a lot more on, here's what our business model is. Here's the size of the opportunity. And therefore, we put that business model with that size of opportunity. Boom, we have this thing, and that thing is interesting, and we know that this thing is real because we have some early evidence that shows that the opportunity is there, and we've got some evidence that we're the right team to execute it. That's what that numbers game looks like. It's at the higher level, right? So that's kind of how I would think about that. Let's see, is there anything else I want to say about that? Yes. So one other thing that I will say about that is, so the idea of potential income. One of the ways that I think startups end up being a bit reductive in this is that they'll look at only like their initial quick idea for their startup. Like, we're going to do this little thing. And we have this concept that we use a lot in the startup space that's called, that we roughly refer to as a question of like, do you have a business? Right. And that sounds like, well, of course we do, right? But we're setting that in kind of opposition to two other things that people sometimes confuse with a business. So you have a business, you have a product, and you have a feature. And a lot of startups are really just features or products in disguise, but they're not really building a business. And so what that means is, like, you could be doing some really, I think I talked about this on last week's show, but like you could be talking about an early just idea for a thing that's going to make our lives better or whatever. And it's like a one and done. You build it your own. Maybe you collect some early revenue, maybe you don't. But all the other competitors out there who are in a parallel land, they're just going to add on this feature and crush you, right? Because they already have the market share. So like, you're building this feature. It's not very interesting anyway. It's not even super scalable. You're going to end up, it's a one-hit wonder, one and done. You get your one nice track that sells well, and all the other songs, you never produce an album that sells, right? It's that kind of thing. And so it's not very interesting. And then you get the product side, which is like a bundle of features that kind of go together. So you can sell this one product, and that's cool, but it's still going to end up stopping there. When you think about the business side, it's like, well, no, when we talk about our TAM, we're actually talking about this group of people that we can serve in different ways under the same umbrella. So we're going to offer this core value proposition, but then there's these parallel ways that maybe we can service them. So that's part of your roadmap, right? Is it part of this opportunity, this big opportunity, is that we're not stopping here. We got these other things that we're going to do once we crush it in that first thing. Also, it's not just different ways to serve the same customer, it's also different customers that you can serve in similar ways. So those customers who have similar needs, right, you can serve them similarly. And then it's about scaling sales and marketing operations to serve different customers. And so that, again, you're just making the opportunity bigger. You're building this business as opposed to just building this narrow product or building this narrow feature. And that also speaks to the size of the market, the TAM, everything else, size of opportunity, and everything else. I think I probably smashed this one down to death here. But your actual question, which I know I didn't answer, was, is there any a video or an easy to understand online tools to help? There are some things that you can do to help this, but what they are going to be specific to what exactly you're trying to do. So I'll give you a couple things. These aren't specific, but just type them into Google. You'll get good results. If not, hit me up again. We'll either talk about them on this channel or I'll send you some resources that are online. One of them is pirate metrics. Pirate metrics are a great thing to look at for the early stage, for the big picture, looking at our bigger metrics to understand like what really is going to make this a successful business or not. And so that's going to be things like the pirate metrics are, if you guys aren't familiar with them, it's the acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, referral, AAARRR, or R. Pirate metrics. And so any business you can describe with those 6 metrics. So you can be looking at these buckets and saying, here's our activation metric, here's our referral metric, right? And then once you have those pretty well defined, those are the things that you're actually measuring and looking at. You can build financials and models around that, right? So if you're on the early stage, it's probably just like, what's our hypothesis about that? Or it could just be building in what's our revenue model and cost structure. And we're going to build some basic math, basic understanding there, in which case you can get away from a numbers perspective with the business model canvas even. Right? Or get something a little further. And if you're further along and you need to like kind of run this stuff together, then you start getting into what we'd call pro formas and detailed financial projections. These are spreadsheets, where you build things out and they got multi-year things and they're designed to surface things, test hypotheses, and build models that you can test around. So depending on what you're going to do in that space is what you're really looking for that. So let me know if you want more details on that. Otherwise, I hope this from a big picture at least was helpful. And then June's follow-up here. So the third mentor who said you need to go to market. Am I right? Yes, you do. All right. So I will happily be the third. I will beat that drum all day long. Too many startups neglect that, and they just go like, I'm just gonna go find my customers out there. I'm sure they're there. I'll spend some money and get them. Yay! Right? But that's not very great. So I think that is going to wrap it up. That was a long question or a simple question with a very long answer. You guys know me by now. That's not very interesting. And so, of course, I'm going to be back here next Thursday. This will be next Thursday will be our final show of 2022. Then we take 2 weeks off because nobody's going to be paying attention at that part of the year anyway. Then we'll be back in January. So next week, get your questions in, reflections on the year. I'm going to have some interesting things to talk about. I'm looking forward to it. So I'll see you guys next week for that year-end reflection. And if you have a question or anything that you want to throw at me, you can just smack this link here. And this one will take you to a page where you can type a question, record a question, or record a question. And if you record a video, I'll actually play it on the air here. And we can just answer it there. So definitely send me your questions. And with that, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, a great weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Peace out.